All right. The owner of a football team claims that the mean attendance at games is over 59,100, and he is therefore justified in moving the team to a city with a larger stadium. Identify the type 2 error for the test. So this is the type 1, type 2 error stuff. Okay, so that's in the notes. Let me grab it for you. Type 1, type 2 error stuff. There it is. I'll put it down here for you. All right. So here it is right here. And it says a type 1 error, reject the null when it was true. So these are errors that we make in a hypothesis test. Type 2 error, fail to reject the null when it was false. So in other words, it's like an error made in a court of law, right? You can have a person come in who's really guilty. He or she did the crime, but the evidence the DA puts forward is kind of weak, and you end up letting the person go. That's a mistake, really. That's an error, right? You let a guilty person go. That's one type of error. That's actually a type 2 error. And then the other kind of error is you can have an innocent person come in and you end up convicting them. That's a really sad error, right? Convicting an innocent person. That's actually called a type 1 error. And that's our court of law is set up to not make that error. That's why we assume innocent unless evidence is really strong. So just like there's two kinds of errors you can make in a court of law, convicting a guilty person or releasing an innocent I said I'm getting confused. Releasing a guilty person or convicting an innocent person. Those are both errors, right? Well, that's the same thing can happen when we do hypothesis tests because we're looking at evidence. We're looking at statistical evidence. We can there could be something that's true, like you could be testing a new treatment for COVID, and it really could be a great great what's it called where it prevents it. It's I don't know why the word's slipping out of my mind, but it could prevent you getting COVID, and but the test ends up saying no, we don't think it's going to work. That'd be an error. Or we could have a prevention for COVID, and it doesn't actually work, but they test it out and they think it's going to work. Based on the evidence they look at, those would both be errors. Two different kinds of errors, though. Realize something that's really working that you say is not working versus something that's not working you say is working. There's two ways you can make that error. Well, that's type 1, type 2 errors, we call them. All right, so let's get back to the problem and we'll try to identify which one is being made here. To do that, you can't skip the steps. I've had a lot of students over the years. They think that they can just somehow magically figure out the answer without writing everything out. No, you have to go through the steps. Even though we're not going to run any numbers, we're not going to push buttons on our calculator, we still have to go through the steps of claim, HO, and H1. So what's being claimed here? Claims the mean is over 59,100. So the mean, what does over mean? Greater than, right? Greater than. He claims the mean is greater than 59,100. Okay, so we go to the HO, we go to the H1. We have to write these out. There's no way we're going to get the right answer if we don't write claim HO, H1. You have to do this. Don't try to skip these. These are required. You won't be able to figure anything out without them. What is HO always? It's always equals. Always equals, and we always use the same number. And therefore, one of these two, remember, one of these two has to match the claim. So it's not HO because HO is equals. So the claim must be H1. So that one is the claim. Okay, remember how the evidence goes. It's weak evidence that will lead us to HO, and Strong evidence will always lead us to H1. Okay, let's do it. And this is identify a type 2 error. Well, come on down here. Let's grab it from the notes. Type 2 error, failed to reject the null when it was false. Let's go back up and write that. So type 2, or type 2 is fail to reject the null when it is false. In other words, the null is false. You should reject it, but you failed to reject it. You made an error. That's a type 2 error. I got that right off the notes, the exam 3 notes. Okay, let's see what's going on here. So that means we failed to reject the null, meaning we keep the null, don't we? If you fail to reject it, you don't reject it, you keep it. So that means they kept the null. This right here. They keep the null. But in reality, the null was false. See how I just put those two facts together, right? They failed to reject the null. That's what type 2 error says. Failed to reject the null, meaning you keep the null. So I wrote keep next to the null, but it, meaning the null, it is false. False, the null is false. Okay, which means the other one is true, right? H1 must really be true. All right, let's see what happens. Let's read the words. Failed to reject the idea that the mean attendance is more than 59,100. Well, we failed to reject the null. Is the null the idea that the mean attendance is more than 59,500? Is that the null? No.
No.
Right. The idea that the mean attendance is more than 59, this is not HO. We failed to reject HO. This is not HO. Not more than. Okay, reject it. No, it's not rejected. Fail to reject. So we can get rid of that one. That's just obviously wrong. It's one of these fail to reject. So fail to reject the idea that the mean attendance is equal. Is that right? Is that what we failed to reject? Yes, right? Yes, that's HO. But this one says it too. So they're both good so far. So we got to read on. You tracking with me? See how both of those are right, right? We failed to reject the HO. That's what it says right here for a type 2 error. You failed to reject the HO. What's the HO? Equals. Equal. Equal. Yes, that's looking good. We failed to reject the equals idea. We failed to reject the equals idea. Let's read on. They're both good so far. When it is actually what? The attendance. The attendance is actually less. Is that right? Is the attendance actually less?
No, it's greater.
When it is actually greater. See what's true is greater, right? If this one was false, right? Remember the null was false, so I wrote false by the null, which means the other one's true. What's true? This greater. It's actually greater. So this part is wrong. This is the right answer. So see how it makes us carefully read all those words and be really clear what a null is, an alternative, and what all those things mean. Strong evidence, weak evidence, error. So that's what I'm wanting for you, is to be a careful understander. Is that a word? One who can really understand all these words.